All right. Hello. We are live. Hello, everybody. I'm just going to click over here on Instagram and get that live as well. Takes a second for that to carry over. Make sure it's muted. Sometimes I forget. And then we start listening to me talking in the background off of Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Looks like just as a heads up, it says we're having issues with streaming to Facebook. Facebook may be experiencing some downtime. That's okay. People can catch us all over the place. So just as a heads up to you, in case you have anybody reaching out going, I don't see you live on Facebook. Facebook appears to not be working right now, but that's okay, because the exciting part is what happens right here in this conversation. So first off, thank you for everybody who's joining us, whether you're joining us live, whether you're joining us recorded. Appreciate you taking time out of whatever part of your day it is to listen to what we have to say. I feel confident that something that one of us says is going to resonate, and that always excites me to think about the things that it could make people think of or do. So with all that, I'm excited to have Gaby here with me. Gaby and I have we've known each other for about a year now, I would say, right?
Yeah.
And have absolutely had some time to have some conversations, but not an extensive, long length of time. So the cool part about this is I've had these questions I've been wanting to ask you, and now we're going to do it.
Perfect.
Live in front of everybody. So
live and in color.
Why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do, and then we'll chat.
Yeah, so my name is Gabriella Anderson. I founded Bucio Media Solutions, a communications and public relations company. And I help companies, brands from, Fortune 10 to solopreneurs and entrepreneurs tell their story in a way that resonates with the audience that they're trying to reach, stands out, leaves an impression, and helps them build authority.
Woo, you've got yours down pat. That's amazing. I still stumble over trying to say what I do succinctly, and I completely get it. If I didn't know you when you just said that, I would have had an absolute understanding of exactly what you do.
I'm glad.
So yeah. So there's a lot to what you do, right? There's multiple pieces. Yeah. There's personal brand building, and there's overall corporate marketing. And while there's an overlap, there's definitely some very unique things that you need to be able to pull out of that. Yeah. But one thing I was thinking about when it comes to marketing and telling your story and branding, which a big part of that is communications, public relations, which I'm going to guess sometimes is just in general public relations, but sometimes it's making sure if something has happened that you're clear with your audience why that happened, and clearing up any type of misunderstanding that might take place. Mm-hmm. And when I've been working with clients sometimes on just general projects, obviously marketing, branding comes in. And I've noticed that as I'm going through those projects and helping them with marketing or branding or those discussions, I start to discover things about myself, because there's a lot to that storytelling, which is what you do, right? You help peel back layers. So it's not just on the surface, right? It's not just on the surface, what do you do, but why does what you do matter to you, and why would it matter to other people? And you're really skilled at that. Is that something that you felt you were already good at in general? Or is it something that you, as you were doing other stuff, realized this is a niche that I'm good at, and so I'm going to focus on it?
Well, it's funny. I have to go a little bit back in my career to where it started, because I really think for me it was accidental. I mean, I think we're all in college and you're trying to figure out what to do. And I just had a lot of professors, as I was really defining my profession, tell me, communications would be great for you. You're great at communicating. You're great at connecting. Back then, communications looks very different than it does now, right? PR communications. And we can go into a little bit about what that means, because I think sometimes when you said, oh, I got it. A lot of people are like, wait, what does that actually mean? So we could talk a little bit about that. But back then, communications was TV, radio, newspapers, right? And they're like, it's storytelling, and you're just a natural, organic storyteller. It must be like my Mexican background, the storytelling piece of it. So it was kind of accidental. But as I went in through my career, I started to hone in. So I did sports marketing. I did general marketing. I did radio sales, and kind of different facets of marketing and communications. Very, very broad. But when I got to the public relations piece, which is organic, free media coverage. So it's not an ad. It's not something you pay for. You're trying to get the attention of journalists with your brand's story to cover what you're trying to have them cover. So for example, I'm just going to say a corporate example here. Like when I worked at AT&T, we're launching the new iPhone, right? But this isn't an ad, and we have ads running, and you have your marketing ad budget. Buy one iPhone, get another for free, da, 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 da. but then what is the story behind the launch of this iPhone? Now, mind you, I was in the initial launch of the iPhones in 2007 or 8 with Verizon. This is years later with AT&T. It started to get really hard to find a story to tell by the 13th freaking iPhone or whatever it was. I dreamt iPhone launches. It was exhausting.
Right.
But you're looking for a, hey, this iPhone is different and this is why. And this is going to be interesting to your audience because of this. These are some of the trends that we're seeing, what people are interested in. And then the journalist is like, well, we want to cover iPhones because it's trendy, it's on topic. And then you have this way to go about it, which is interesting to them and their audience and doesn't feel disingenuous. Okay. Doesn't feel disingenuous to the media outlet who is like, I need a good story. Don't bullshit me. I need a good story.
Right.
Or I'm not going to cover it. We're talking tier 1 outlets. We're talking New York Times. We're talking Dallas Morning News. We're talking WFAA, Channel 8 in Dallas. So I got so hooked on that because in other marketing that I did before, I was about halfway through my career at this point. It was just very like plug and play, do this, you get this. And it's like, but this was your selling of a story, which kind of pulled my sales background a little bit from the Mavericks and from radio, and then my marketing knowledge and this and that, and then you get a hit, so you get the coverage, and it is something that people who do PR, they get it. Like it's just so satisfying because it's really a very whole effort to get to that point. That is how I honed in on public relations and communications. I was kind of a long-winded answer, but feel free to dig into that however you'd like.
Yeah, no, well, I love the storytelling piece, right? I'm a storyteller, and I think I did storytelling as a fictional writer, as an autobiographical writer, as a poet, as a journalist, in photography, as a teacher. Like the storytelling element becomes so important because whether you're talking about your own story, the story of a product that you're trying to market,
right,
or you're telling a story to educate, you're telling a story to entertain, in all of those pieces, there's a lot of things that come into play. How much or how little do you share? Word choice. I laugh because, and I just recently dug this out, the thesaurus, right? That's what we used to use. We didn't Google.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah.
We had the thesaurus, and I loved the thesaurus.
Yeah.
And the reason that I loved it is you can look up synonyms for a word and you'll look at the synonyms. And in theory, they are synonyms. But the meaning that you get behind a single word, we're not even talking about a phrase, a single word.
Totally.
Right? How many different ways you can say something and the different connotations that are associated with that. Totally. And I was listening to a speaker the other day that I happened to engage in with, and he was talking about Daryl Stinson. He said, people don't move unless they're moved. And that's not a new concept, right? We've heard people say that before. And that's what it comes down to. What you choose for that word, what you choose for that phrase, what's the story you tell is going to create impact. And that impact is ultimately what's going to drive somebody to make a decision about, do I buy this book? Do I buy this product? Do I change my life because I just read this story?
Right.
And it's tricky, and there's a lot of weight that comes with that, because sometimes I'll even find that I'll tell a story and people will laugh. I'll tell the same story and people will cry. I'll tell the same story and people will be kind of like, I'm not that interested. Some of that's audience, but it's also what I choose to emphasize. And so that's brilliant with what you're talking about. You're right. When you're at the 13th iteration of something, or when you're on a stage and you're telling your story for the 13th time, how do you keep it new to an audience that might have already heard the story? And how do you keep it new to you so that you tell it with the same conviction and emotion that you told it the first time you shared that? So I think,
I love that. What
is that process like for you? I think so. There's the big picture. There's what is the story of the iPhone? Because you use that as an example.
Sure.
And I know that a lot of times, particularly in younger generations, they're buying an iPhone because it's hip, it's cool. I don't know if hip's the word they use. Probably I just dated myself entirely. It's hip. It's not hip anymore. But it's in style. It's fashionable, and so Oh, is that
weird?
Oh, all right.
No, it's not so
my daughter teases me sometimes. She teaches me some of these words, and she's like, "You're not allowed to use them." I'm like, "You guys are using our language and our things that we said."
100%.
But again, that the phone itself has appeal even before you know what the upgrades are, right? Just because it's a new iteration of the iPhone. But then you've got an audience of people that are maybe I want to switch. Maybe I don't want to stick with the iPhone, or I already have an iPhone and it works really well. Why do I want to go with a new one? And so again, you're trying to reach people and connect with them where their needs already are. You're not going to create things that don't exist. So what is that process like for you in general, whether it's the iPhone or something else, and peeling back and understanding the words? Let's just start with the words that are going to create the impact. Do you use like the emotion wheel? Like, how do you kind of get at that?
That's so interesting. I will say, just as you were talking about this, I couldn't stop thinking about AI, because I've had this conversation recently where people are like, oh, AI, especially in our industry in public relations, where we do a lot of wordsmithing, writing. Writing is really the foundation, right, for pitches, for press releases. And there's been a lot of fear about that. And I really think that while tools like ChatGPT and Gemini, and they're improving every time. Even the other day, I tried to do something in Gemini and it hadn't been upgraded. And my husband was like, because he's an engineer, oh, and they mentioned it at the Google event, there's an update. And I'm like, oh my God, like they just updated like 30 days ago. But it's constantly changing, right? It is an amazing tool, right, to help. What it has been very helpful for me for is when you're exhausted from writing so much, because I'm going to tell you something, it does get to a point where it's like, you're where do you start, right? Like it's a very helpful tool to get your creative juices flowing and all that good stuff, but there's always a need for, and it's going to change our world for sure, but you need that storytelling piece that resonates and connects. And at the end of the day, you are able to use your background and your expertise to connect those dots, right? So when I'm looking at a story, I am using ChatGPT and Gemini throughout the day on different things. Nothing that is, where we're not allowed to, because there is information that's not public and all of that good stuff, right? But to get ideas flowing, it's very important for me to first get the lay of the land, right? Like what resonates with people right now? And this is easier said than done, Deb, because especially when you're talking with, not only corporate, the individual solopreneur, they have something they want to say. But they're like, this is a great pitch. And you're like, well, you have to like understand that we need to understand what's trending, what people care about. What is the moment in time? How can we tie that back to a moment in time that's relevant for media? So first you kind of need to see what's out there, right? Like what's trending? What are people talking about? You do searches. This is where ChatGPT and Gemini can be super helpful these days. What's trending about, I have different clients, but in the sports industry, the tourism industry, and what recent reports have gone out with interesting data and insights, right? So then you get that kind of lay of the land, and then you look at what story you're trying to tell, what you're trying to push out. Is it a new product that's come out? Are you just trying to get out there and evergreen stories, which are general stories you can tell at any time of the year, they're harder, right? Because you really want to try and capture that moment in time. And so aligning your story pillars with those moments in time is super important. For example, launch of summer, right? In the tourism industry, great opportunity for you to get ahead of that, ahead of time. What are the trends going to be this summer? What do people care about? What is the airplane industry like? What's the cruising industry like? What are some of the things that we anticipate to happen this summer? Then you take what you've got going on, the announcements that you have been working on and planning for, because this is planned for 6 months or a year ahead of time, right? And you're aligning it to those trends. Then comes the writing piece, right? Then comes, I've got the trends. What reporters are the right fit for this? Who is going to care? What reporters do we have relationships with that we can reach out to and maybe soft sell and get an idea for what they might be interested in? And then you write. So I'm going to tell you, one thing I love about working with entrepreneurs is that there's a lot more creativity in how I get to approach things. Whereas with, more structured corporate clients, you're trying to fit in a ton of agendas into a story that you are trying to get someone's interest in covering. Right. So once you get all of that legwork, which people don't see that, they're just like, oh yeah, send a pitch. There's a lot that goes into this preparation if you want to do it right and if you want to get picked up. Then you start thinking about that wordsmithing. Then you start thinking about what goes where, what words are going to resonate the most. You want to be clear. You want to be concise. You want to connect with the reporter. And this is where I was just reading something really interesting on LinkedIn this morning, where they were talking about how new PR people come in and they're just mass sending out pitches, right? Like almost like bots. And I even at the Build Your Brand Live with Chris and Jen, one of the editors up there was saying how people will pitch her and they don't even know what the name of her magazine is. They don't even know what her name is. They don't even know what she covers. No one is doing this research that I talked about. Because I'm going to tell you a little trade secret. It takes a shit ton of time. That takes a lot of time and preparation that people just want to skip over. They just want to mass send something out. But when you take the time to do the research and connect with a reporter and develop the pitch customized to that reporter, what they've covered. Hey, I loved your recent article on XYZ. I think it really resonates with what I'm trying to talk about here.
Right.
This is the idea that we're trying to, put forth. What do you think about this? Is this something you'd be interested in? If not, is there something that you've got coming up? I mean, it is a relationship building thing. And that is where I love the PR. This is in Spanish, we call it mero mole, which I don't know what the translation for that is. Mole is like that food. The chocolate based food. Right. It means like it's my heart, right? It's like where you start to build those relationships with reporters where you're, understanding what they need. They understand what you can, expertise you can provide, and it has to work for them. Right. It has to work for them. But once you connect with that reporter, and once you get that story, then you keep on working it, right? Now, they're going to write it and they have, total creative license in how they cover something, but how you communicate both in writing and connect with that reporter and in the follow-up, which a lot of people skip over, in the phone call and, hey, did you get this? What do you think? Are we on track? Is there anything? That is, for me, where I really just get into pushing the story forward and then hopefully getting something at the end of it. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Because what you're talking about is at the core of it all is building the relationship, because in order for you to understand, well, first the research, the trend, and I agree. I think I have used those tools for research. As a creative writer, I don't like to even ask ChatGPT to scope things for me. That's just a personal preference, because I don't want it to influence, because my emotion drives a lot of what I write.
Right.
So I'm very aware of what I do and don't kind of put in there to make sure that I don't get something that's going to influence me. But from a research perspective, yeah, I mean, you're going to pull stuff. And honestly, even like your Google now, which there are pros and cons to, is powered by AI. It's got your little meta, and in Facebook, you go in, you want to search, it's got meta. So a lot of that stuff is just in, and I'm sure we could discuss with other folks a whole bunch of different perspectives on who does and doesn't like it. But at the end of the day, it's where we are. And there are things ways that we can maneuver through that are going to make it beneficial. And so that first part that you talked about was the research. You got to know what you're doing, whether you're researching the background on a topic you're talking about, or you're researching people, what's trending, et cetera. But then when you're talking about the selection of the actual words that get used, whether it's a sentence or a word or a paragraph, it's the relationship.
Sure.
And so, you used the Spanish phrase. I'm sorry, I can't repeat it. Okay. So even though once you explained what it meant, like, I understand that, because that's very important to me too. And everything I do, for me, it's connection, right? That's what you're talking about, connection. Whether I am working with somebody at a corporate project, I'm working with coaching somebody, I'm talking to a friend, connection helps to drive the way that we respond, the words that we choose, and the way that we say those words. Because it is going to be very situational, and it is going to be based on what is that person saying. You need to listen. And you talked about like taking the time to look at the article. I absolutely agree. And for me, when I see a journalist, or I see somebody that I want to respond, either maybe they're requesting somebody and I would like to be considered as a source, or they reach out to me directly, one of the first things I do is I go online and I look at the other stuff that they wrote. Number one, I want to make sure that we're in alignment, right? That this is somebody that's going to make sense for me to partner with, which is what it is. When you're acting as a source, or you're asking a journalist to use you as a source, you're asking for a partnership there. So I want to make sure that there's at least some type of alignment on that topic, at least. And then I want to look at what else they've written. I want to understand them. It's an opportunity to get to know somebody else. That's a win for everybody. 100%. At the very least, even if you end up not moving forward with marketing for that person, or not moving forward with being covered in that article, you've just connected with another person. You never know how that's going to unfold later in life in a way that's going to help them or you.
And I think you and I connect on that regard, connections.
Yeah.
And I think you seem like the creative writing side is really important to you. And I think for me, it's also the personality, right? And a lot of times people try to put too much information. I had this one client that would write and he was he is an excellent writer, but he would put these pitches together and it was so robotic and so like dun 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 dun. And you have to understand that at the other end of that email is a person who is very busy, who you have this like smart window, probably the window of what they can see in your email. There is, and the like right here, right? Like what they could see when they open your email on the phone. That is your opportunity to connect with someone.
Right.
And regurgitating a bunch of facts and a bunch of stuff that they don't care about, that is not a connection, right? That is, and I'm busy and I don't have time for this. And so I think too, for me, it's thinking about how you position something and being very specific and very concise and very relevant with every single thing you're including in there. It takes me time to write every email because I know that is my one shot to get their attention, but it's also my one shot to connect with them. Right. And the thing about going back and looking at their article is that now you can also go on their Twitter page. And I try to not creep on Facebook and stuff like that because that's a little more personal. But especially for media, I mean, it depends on the. But
yeah, I look at everything. I'm like, I'm good.
Right. I was gonna say, it depends on like for this, right? You're like, I like to Facebook, that's different. But I'm talking for journalists. A lot of the stuff that they're interested in, they're posting on Twitter. That's a little more relevant to business, right? Like not family stuff and stuff like that. And so you can kind of see what kind of content they're engaging with, what kind of content they're reposting. And so there was one journalist who I liked his articles, but he had posted something recently about a social issue that I thought was super important. And it wasn't an article and it wasn't anything that I was like, hey, this was so interesting to me. I didn't know this was happening. And he responded right away. I was like, hey, I'm totally not interested in your pitch, but thanks for mentioning that. Like, this is really, important to me. And to your point, that established a connection. And he reacted to that. And while he wasn't interested in that one pitch, who knows how that'll play down the line. And I will take the time to respond back, and engage with their stuff. And when I'm doing research on the reporter and what they've covered, I'm also doing research on their Twitter. And I'm engaging with their content and I'm following them. And now, you've got all of the verified stuff and you can only send a certain amount of messages on LinkedIn and Twitter. And it's very different than it was even a year ago where you could blow someone up on LinkedIn and Twitter. Now those messages have to be intentional. And that is where people come in. And that's where personality comes in. And that's where connection comes in. And that is something you can't fake. And that is something that if you really put a little bit of effort into it, will pay dividends in your career, in your coverage down the line. Now, don't get me wrong. A shit story is never going to get coverage, period. I don't care how much the reporter loves you. But at the end of the day, you're going to be able to have people, right, that you have a rapport with, that it's not just, miscellaneous girl from Dallas. No, it's, Gaby, she was really sweet. She mentioned that thing to me about, we had a brief moment in a world of transaction. And so for me, it's that creative writing piece is where you come out, right? And I can't emphasize enough how important that has been in my career, not only in my career in public relations and communications and getting and building that connection with people, but also in building my career and building relationships and getting clients, so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then at the end of the day, whatever you're putting forth in that pitch, if it's disingenuous and it's not who you are, then you're going to end up having to completely, I shouldn't say completely, but you're going to have to, at least on some level, become that persona for the length of the TV interview, article, stage, etc. So it benefits everybody to be really true to you because that's who you are. That's who you're going to show up as. That's who you should show up as. And
in a world of bots, people really appreciate authenticity, personality, genuine connection.
Yeah, I think more now than ever before, which is interesting. I feel like when I first got into business consulting, I had been a teacher and there was some life circumstances. And so I had done consulting on like an outside level as a teacher. People would ask me questions and I would help them out with stuff because I was, I had a good skill at problem solving and process building and copywriting. So like I was doing that, but it wasn't a full-time thing or anything I thought I was going to ultimately end up doing. And then life stuff happened, and all of a sudden I was doing business consulting for a financial services firm. So in some ways I was like, what am I doing? Right. Like it
Yes.
felt like I was out of my league. But then when I was answering questions, I was realizing that like ultimately I did know the answers to those questions.
Yeah.
And the more that I leaned into and built those relationships with those people and really took the time to get to know them and really took the time to think about the skill sets that I had, the more it multiplied and reciprocated. And that's why I've been able to kind of build the type of business that I have now and be able to do that. It's taking time to get to know people and to build those relationships and to be authentic and genuine in those conversations.
That's needle moving, for
Yeah.
someone in their career and in their work.
Yeah. So I mean, you were talking a lot about, I mean, you get excited when you're talking about all the different things. So it's kind of hard to say, has there been a particular project or focus that you've worked on that you felt like it was specifically unique for you or something that you hadn't expected?
Hmm. Um, I would say one thing I really enjoy about public relations, and like I said earlier, this is specifically speaking to unpaid organic media coverage that you get, whether it's in an editorial piece, whether it's a contribution piece. So it's the work of getting your brand covered in media because it is relevant to that audience and relevant to the current trends and all of that stuff. And I think one of the things as I left corporate America, I still have corporate clients, but I left corporate America and started my own business, is being able to work on with a variety of brands, with a variety of clients. So, I have my client Jennifer Pressimone, right? And she is a healer with aromatherapy and an intuitive, and has this really special gift where she can, through scent, help people move past emotional blocks and healing and lift their mood. And I remember when I met her and she was telling me what she did, I'm like, that is so interesting, right? Like, so true that scents transport us to a place of a bad memory, a good memory, a healing, and so I got so into that, right? Or Anne Shikahisa, she's her ethnicity is from Japan. She does this really gorgeous jewelry that is so unique to something only that I've never seen before, that only she could create. And there's this amazing story behind how she got to being a jeweler and a metalsmith I love that piece of it. And I'll be really honest that the entrepreneur and solopreneur piece of it has been harder for me as a business to scale and monetize,
Sure.
because at the point where I'm in my career, and thank you, Diosito, for the blessing of where I am, I have my hourly rate is not cheap, right? And so it's been a little bit of a struggle to figure out how to help these businesses they're successful businesses, but it's not a corporate 10, corporate 100 company, who understands that sometimes you need a month, 2-3 months to work on strategy, to work on connecting with the right reporters.
Right.
And the challenge with that is that when it's different industries, you've got to do research in the different industries, the different reporters, the different trends. So there's a lot of setup that comes into that. So full transparency, it's an area where I'm struggling to figure out how to monetize and scale. But what's been so interesting to me is the ability to get to know the passion and purpose behind these different types of businesses and what they're doing. And I'm very moved by it, right? On the other side, I'm supporting NASCAR with their DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts and marketing efforts. And it's super interesting. And just like you, probably I'm like, NASCAR, DE&I, what? When we're doing the RFP, guess what? Amazing background and story throughout NASCAR's history of trailblazers who have come and left a mark on the sport of all ethnicities, women, there's NASCAR Mexico, NASCAR Japan, things that I was like, this is a cool story to tell, as a public relations professional. That is the kind of really cool moment in time, monumental story that you want to put out there and change the narrative and the brand. You can help a brand increase their value by the perception of that brand. Like, pause and think about that for a second, right? Like, I've worked for companies like AT&T, Verizon, like the wrong story in the media can bankrupt a company. All right. Now, we can't spin anything. If someone does some stupid shit up at the executive level, like, there's no erasing that from the map, but there's positivity that you can continue to put out there and build a brand authentically, right? About what they say. And then on the other end, on the tourism industry with Carnival Cruise Lines, and I'm working on their work and sustainability, their initiatives, and how they're transforming their brand to be more sustainable, and how, like, the story of how that brand has recovered and their, financials of how they're doing after COVID is so interesting to me. Like, I thought during COVID, the cruise industry, not because I was not supporting them at the time. I'm like, I don't know if they're going to survive this, right? I mean, like, imagine COVID and cruises. Holy moly. They're doing amazing. So, like, for me to dig into those stories as a professional and understand the motivation, the passion, and purpose behind a big brand to a small solopreneur and entrepreneur, that's what keeps me going. That is what keeps me coming to work each day. It's new. It's different. It's a different challenge. Being an entrepreneur, not having a full team of 200 people like at AT&T, where I could be like, here's the digital Rolodex of this expert and that expert and that expert and that expert, and they all work with me and we can all get together and brainstorm. Now I'm like, what friends do I have who I can call and pick their brain and talk about this? I'm stuck on this headline. This is where Gemini can sometimes come in handy to, be my, just get me out of my head for a minute. But I do miss that piece of having a massive team to just collaborate with. And I do it with my different clients too. But that's what I love. I love that challenge of having totally opposing clients where it's never boring and it's never the same challenge.
Sure.
From morning to PM even, right? That's what keeps me loving what I do. That's the fire behind my passion and purpose for my career.
Yeah, the variety. And I think, one of the things as you were talking, because I was thinking about that obviously it hits close for me as well, right? I have a lot of similar circumstances. I work with some big in business sense.
Yeah.
And it's fascinated by finding the little within the big corporations and the big within the little, meaning solopreneurs, right? You find the big impact they can make, and you find within the big corporations, the little changes that they can make. So a lot of that really is fascinating. And I realized that I got sidetracked too before, because we were talking about the reason why now you can almost be a little bit more authentic or genuine as you used to be. So when I first got into the consulting world, and then I veered off and forgot to tell that part of the story, there was very much, you kind of were expected to write much more formalized emails and things like that. And I think now, because there's so much robotic responses going on, people kind of embrace I call it cheesiness, but it is a little bit of the cheesiness, the little silly comments and things, because they recognize they're interacting with a person. And so there's a lot of value in that. And so even more so than in the past, it's really important for, like you said, whether you're pitching or presenting yourself, whatever the situation is, to let that piece of you come out and not think that you have to segment. Obviously, we polish ourselves a little bit differently, right? The way that we act in our pajamas with our family on a Saturday morning is not the same that we act in a meeting, but we can still allow that us to shine through. So,
and I'm a big LinkedIn fan, because I think it's become such a just wealth of information and thought leadership. There was this article that I follow a lot of comms professionals, and everybody has a different opinion. And I remember at one point in my career being like scared to make a decision. I mean, there were some big decisions. There were some times where my leadership would be like, okay, you decide and let's see what happens. And then it would be a total screw up. And I'm like, no, I don't, and I'm scared. But that's how you learn, right? But I remember being scared to trust myself, right? And one thing I think in my older career, and as I've, had more years under my belt, I realize what you bring to the table is your decision-making authority, right? And you are going to be wrong. And guess what? Leaders of the top presidents make mistakes. I took a class at SMU about the process of making a hard decision. And you're getting counsel from the most brilliant people in the world as a president. It was the presidents, the hard decisions that they made. And it's like, they still make wrong decisions, because even with the highest level of counsel in the world, people are coming from their own level place of knowledge, right? And so I, at some point, started to trust my decisions more and trust my knowledge, right? And of course, you get counsel, but at the end of the day, you need to make a decision, right? I'm even teaching my 7-year-old at 8. He's 8 now, Deb. Where I'm like, I'm reading this amazing book called Good Inside by Dr. Becky, and she's like, the way you raise confident kids is to let them make decisions and make mistakes, and then they learn from that. You raise the opposite of a confident. You raise an insecure child by making decisions for them all the time, and then all of a sudden they're 18.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to order their own damn food in the restaurant. Okay. Like, come on. Like, I have seen old teenagers who cannot make eye contact with the server and order their food. That's just crazy to me. Okay. So, but going back to your personalization, that confidence in making decisions, there was a time when I was criticized because in my emails, I would be, I mean, I'm bubbly, I'm a friendly person, right? At some point, I tried to oppress that in my career because people were like, you're just a little too much. Again, a Spanish saying, too much crema on the tacos, too much cream on the tacos. Like, less cream, right? Like, you're very like, your hands and your colors and, and I was like, oh man, like, how can I be someone else? And I really tried. And that was included in my emails, right? Like, don't use so many exclamation points, don't use smiley faces. And to your point, there is a balance, right? And you kind of figure out what that balance is. It depends on your client. It depends on the topic of the email. It depends on a million things. But that emotional awareness of how to be yourself while still be appropriate for the conversation. Yes, I include exclamation points in emails now. Yes, there are certain people that I'll put a smiley. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. And it is, smiley face. Absolutely, I put that in there. And not as a bot either, because now the freaking bots are doing emojis themselves. Lord. But
I know.
But it's about just having the ability, and I think especially in emails, having the ability to convey a little bit of your persona with those, to your point, maybe jokes or whatever it is, right? That's you. I mean, I know a president of an agency who writes in all lowercase letters. I mean, he's a brilliant communicator, okay, and knows grammar, but he writes, sometimes doesn't even include a headline, writes in lowercase letters, 2 or 3 words. You got the message. You know what you need to do. He's the most loving and caring person in the world, the most amazing mentor, incredibly brilliant person. But when he communicates via email, it's to the point. I don't have time to and that's him. And you read the email, and I just always kind of smile because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so him, And so I think that's super valuable. And I think the people on the other end, here's what I've learned, that if I'm not for you, I genuinely that's okay.
Right.
That's genuinely okay if I'm not for you. I am at the point in my life, again, knocking on wood, thank you, Diosito. I can choose the people I work with. I can choose the clients I have. I love my clients. I love the work I'm doing. I am myself. I wear my bright pink purple lipstick. I can either wear tennis shoes or my cute little heel. I can wear my hair curly. I used to straighten my hair because curly hair was considered a little too, I don't know, extra. I don't know. I would straighten my hair, wouldn't wear anything too extra. There was a phase in my career where I did that. It was exhausting. It was depressing. It did not lead to a version of myself that was happy and fulfilled.
Right.
So in the little things and in the big things, in an email, in a text message, in a presentation, show up as who you are. And who is that? And how do you get there? I don't, that's a whole conversation for another day. Right. But I do think that should be the goal for all of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100%. And I could feel your desire to do that for yourself, but also to help your clients do that. Absolutely. Because that allows them to not only be successful as a brand, but it allows them to feel happy. And that's important, right? You want to feel good about the decisions that you're making, even when they don't go the way that you want them to go.
And it also comes in communications. Mm-hmm. It's not regurgitating some business jargon. It is coming through to the person on the other end who we're trying to reach with a genuine, authentic message that aligns with your brand, that aligns with your values, that isn't BS. Journalists, there's a such thing as an investigative journalist, okay? And it's what it sounds like. They will sniff it. They will sniff the BS. It is for me the most important thing in everything that I do day in and day out, from my home life to my professional life, 100%.
Yeah. So we could go on and on. We're at 40 minutes here, and I want to make sure that we have a chance to get. So before I get your final thought, I want to say, I want to make sure that you give everybody your information. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you, to follow you, etc.?
Yeah, I think for me, it's LinkedIn. My socials are pretty locked down. My Insta and my Facebook's to more of my inner circle. I'm that person who is like private Insta and Facebook. Of course, if we become friends, then we can be.
But on LinkedIn, so how do they get in touch with you on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is G Bucio, /G Bucio. My company's Bucio Media Solutions. And that's the best place to find me.
Excellent. All right. Now what is your final thought that you would like to leave everybody with for today?
I think in the past few years of me going on my own and all the fear that comes with entrepreneurship, we talked a little bit about the ups and the downs of corporate versus being on your own, and corporate meaning like in-house, salaried employee.
Right.
I think really just don't be afraid to listen to what your intuition is telling you. Don't be afraid to listen to, just speaking of, what you want in life, right? Like what you're trying to accomplish. Like, I think for me and my family, we lost my parents and my husband's parents at a very early age. Us being, I like in our 20s, 30s, which for us was young. We don't have we don't know really anybody who's lost all of their parents, and had certain struggles and everything, where we really just appreciate being happy, being fulfilled with life. And there were moments for us where we were like, this isn't what we want, and I think it's really sad, Deb. I know so many people that I don't talk to in a year or two, 5, and I go back and they're still doing what they don't want. And they're still there, and they're still at that job, they're still in that marriage, whatever, right? And so again, trusting yourself that if there is something that doesn't feel right, ask yourself why and go there. Go there and don't be afraid to make those changes in life, because I just feel like I've been born again, and I'm not trying to be cheesy. Like I had a lot of learnings and growth in my corporate life, but in this chapter for me, where I wanted to be more present in my life holistically. I wanted to continue doing what I do. Clearly, you can see I love what I do. I wanted to have that love and passion for what I do again, because it kind of fizzled a little bit. But I wanted to be a present mom. I wanted to be a present wife. I wanted to feel good. I wanted to be healthy again. And I had just gotten so caught up in things, but I didn't know what was wrong. But I did know what was wrong. I kept on telling me I didn't know what was wrong, telling myself, but I did know what was wrong. And I went there, and I had so many people call me and go, how did you make that decision to leave? How did you make the decision to do this? It's complex, it's convoluted, and it's different for everybody. But what I will say is, if you are sitting there going, this isn't where I want to be in life, having heard both of my parents in their last days say, I didn't do what I wanted to do. I missed this. I missed that. I didn't get to do this. I didn't get to do that. Hearing my parents, the people who I love the most in this world at that moment, now I have my husband and my family, but like two of the most important people in my life, hearing them say, I regret, not doing this when I wanted to do it, or not doing that. I don't feel like I've accomplished everything that I want to accomplish in my life. I'm not ready to go. I mean, I get goosebumps. I don't want to cry, but like hearing my parents say that for me left a very powerful message. And when I was sitting there, disconnected from my family, unhealthy, really just burnout and dry, no more gas, I thought, I don't know what I want and I don't know where I need to go, but I know it's not this. And I need to make a decision. So whatever that is for whoever, I don't care if it's one person. I don't care if it's a 0.5 person. I don't care if it's a seed that's planted. Or maybe it's you. I don't freaking know. But if anybody out there is listening to this and feels slightly unsatisfied, life is too fucking short. I'm sorry, excuse my French. Life is too short to not do something about it. It's just not worth it. That is my biggest thing. And now that I'm here and I'm, I have if you would have told me 2 years ago, I was so scared to make the change. Leave a salary, leave a big salary, a good company, amazing people I worked with. It just wasn't right for me anymore, right? To see myself today making almost the same amount of money, not including my restricted stocks and bonuses, but almost the same salary, working 1/4 to 1/3 of the time that I was working then.
Yeah.
Building something for my future because I'm building something, that's going to take a little bit more time. But currently today, working so much, having so much more time to connect. Not only connect with my family and my best friends and the people around me that I love, but also connect with my clients. Because by the way, you spin yourself out and you're so busy that you're not even connecting with the work that you're doing at some point. You're not even present in the work that you're doing because you're just so spun, right?
Yeah.
But giving myself to be present in everything I'm doing in the world, I am I just feel like I found myself again. And I'm just, do I have 1 minute to finish this story, to wrap up the story?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
So when I was trying to make the decision, a lot was happening, and we won't go, that's also another conversation, but a lot was happening at this moment in time. A lot of messages from the universe, my husband, my kid, my health, all of the messages I was getting, red flag, red flag, red flag, like you need to make a change. But there was one thing that for me was the message, and maybe that's it. Maybe it's listen to your gut, but also listen to the messages, because those messages are all connected, right? But I was going through stuff, cleaning stuff out, and I found a letter that my dad passed away in 2003. So it's quite a long time ago. I was in my mid-20s. And back then he used a typewriter, and he would always type letters and sign them. Sometimes we would write each other letters, but he would always type me letters. And I found this one letter, and he said, I was in college, and I'm trying to think. He saw me graduate from college. It was maybe my last year of college when he wrote this. And he was like, in you, I see this person who is so invigorated with life. You love life so much, and you love everything you do so much. And everywhere you walk into your room, you want to connect with people. It doesn't matter if it's the waiter, it doesn't matter if it's you just have this life in you, and this love for life, and this desire to feel that I just can't wait to see what becomes of you. I can't wait to see what you do with your life. And he said a lot of other things, but I remember reading the letter and being like, who is this person he's talking about? I was a shell. My hair was falling out. I was overweight. I was unhappy. I just remember reading that and being like, who is that? Where did that person go? I'm just getting through the fucking day. I'm just trying to get through the day. I'm trying to get through I'm trying to make it to lunch. And there were messages like that, Deb. But that for me, being like am I going to be a driver in my life, or am I going to be a passenger? Am I going to take charge and live the life that I want, or am I just going to be on cruise control? And that was the turning point for me. And so whatever that is, for whoever that message needs to be, we all deserve to live the life that we want. And that's why we're here. So go do it,
Yeah. We should have the same curiosity for our lives that your dad had for your life. And I can't wait to see what's going to unfold. So I feel blessed that I'm able to see that person that he knew was coming. I've only known you for a short span of time, and I see you continuing to thrive and continuing to grow. So he saw it. You did what you needed to do at the periods in your life that you were in to get to where you are now. And I think those periods grew you. And so sometimes it can feel hard to look back at those and think, why didn't I do it sooner? But you were there for the time so that you could be the person you are now, that when you speak that into somebody's life, I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you and you're saying things that I know, but I'm listening to you say them. And I'm feeling the power of those. And I'm sure that you reached people today, whether it was going to be somebody who watches it after the fact or somebody who is watching it live, it doesn't really matter. But I appreciate you sharing vulnerably about that. And yeah, frame that letter. You're that person. You're that glowing person that your dad saw. So thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for the enjoyable, insightful, educational, everything across the board conversation. But thank you especially for sharing that very personal moment with us so that we can remind ourselves that we are worthy of looking at ourselves that way.
Thank you, Deb. Appreciate you.
All right. Take care, everybody. We appreciate you all for being here. Again, Gabby, thank you for coming. And we hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Yeah. Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. And we hope that everybody has a great week. And yeah, goes out there and looks in the mirror right now and says, I can't wait to see what you're going to do. So take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.